Tim. Good evening. We will call this meeting to order of the Urban Renewal. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Here.
Commissioner Grantham?
Here.
Commissioner Hamrick? Here. Commissioner Reeser?
Here.
Commissioner Schmisher?
Here.
Commissioner A. Smith?
Here.
Commissioner B. Smith? Absent. Commissioner Stein?
Here.
Commissioner Tracy?
Here.
Commissioner Worthington?
Here.
Chairman Payne?
Here. I'd ask people to stand and go with me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is citizens requesting to speak to the Urban Renewal Authority on items not on the agenda. I don't see anybody, so we'll move on. Move on to the consent agenda. Commissioner Grantham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Talking with the incomparable city clerk, Cindy Foster Owens, about some issues with the minutes. I'd like to make the motion here in a second to just remove those minutes, and we'll approve them next meeting when she's had a chance to work her magic on fixing some of the issues with the minutes. So I would make the motion to approve the consent agenda for items B, C, and D, and remove item A until the next meeting.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Aye.
Grantham?
Aye.
Hamrick?
Aye.
Reeser?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
A. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Chairman Payne?
Aye. Thank you. Move on to the financial report.
All right, so the April beginning balance was $851,963.69. In April, we did the monthly transfer to the city for repayment of the initial investment, $5,421.62. We had the facade grant, 901 Main Street, the Keller Williams Building, $4,275 for an April ending balance of $842,267.07. In May, we had that transfer to the city again, $5,421.62. We had some checks for the TIF shareback, one to the Canyon City Fire District, $6,922.50. Rec District received $464.64. And the school district received $2,626.35 for a May ending balance of $826,831.96.
Okay, thank you. So, looking at this year-to-date actual on our property tax increment, $34,768. That's, to me, for our just getting started, is pretty good. What's everybody else's thoughts?
Agreed.
Yeah, okay. All right, any other discussion? Executive Director report?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Don't have a whole lot of activity right now going on with the Urban Renewal Authority. We're making payments on those projects that are complete, such as the Holiday Inn Express. I don't know that we've received any requests yet from Pharisee regarding their project, so we do expect some payment requests as soon as some of that sales tax starts coming in. Obviously, their property tax has not been assessed yet since they completed, so but we do anticipate that here in the coming future. We are seeing some activity on our facade grants. Right now, we have received enough applications that the facade grant could potentially be fully committed if all of the applications go through. And then regarding the life safety grants, I think depending on how tonight's meeting goes with the application that we have, we should have probably enough left to do one more substantial project for this year. For July, it'd be the July 5th meeting. With that being the week of 4th of July, we are going to go ahead and cancel the urban renewal meeting for that month. So next time that we meet will be in August.
Okay.
Rick, anything you want to add?
I feel like Commissioner Grantham has a question or something.
What am I going to do with myself without another meeting?
We're giving you time back, sir.
If you need some advice, we can.
No, some of the facade improvements, and that really has drawn a lot of interest. We have actually one more application than we can fund right now. It's not a full application, it's more of an interest. But Moe's is planning on doing more of an Irish-style pub entrance, so they're going to be replacing windows, putting more of a bar out front. The Bean Peddler and Red Canyon Cycles have pretty bad windows, pretty bad facade that needs to be replaced. They're going to be restoring their building, taking the stucco off, or excuse me, they don't have stucco on it. They're going to be taking care of the brick on the front of their building and restoring that, and then replacing windows in the front as well. So that one will be a pretty significant one. Kaleidoscope has an interest in replacing some windows, and they're the ones right now who are probably not going to be fully funded because we are at our limit. But there's a lot of interest out there in these grants. The life safety grant, we're going to be talking about one today. We're expecting another one soon that I need to confirm. But once that one comes in, we'll likely be fully committed on that as well. So now I'm advising people to come back at the beginning of next year, or at least toward the end of this year, to start applications for next year. So it's been good to see the response, especially for the facade grant, because there's a lot of work that could be done on our main street.
Okay, any questions? Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Payne. For those applications such as the facade grant where we're more than fully subscribed, how is the determination being made as to which ones to move forward with? Is it a first come, first serve?
It's purely first come, first serve right now. Unless they come in together, right now it's first come, first serve.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Any questions? Comments? Okay.
I just have a comment that if we are finally gaining this traction of interest, which we haven't had this much before, and it's exciting that it is happening, we may need to have a consideration of maybe a cycle so that we can prioritize who gets the awards and who doesn't, instead of just a first come, first serve.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So we will look at creating a grant cycle for next year.
Okay, anything else? All right, we'll move on to the discussion to authorize the executive director's signature on a downtown life safety grant application for 517, 519 Main Street, owned by the 500 Block Main Limited. So,
And we'll turn this over to Rick and his
Okay.
presentation.
Yeah, we are talking about a life safety grant, obviously. We talked about that a second ago. 517, 519 Main Street. This is another historic building downtown that is being impacted by change of use primarily. This is owned by, it's actually REI Keyholder, and they are pretty significant investors in our community right now. Katie is here with us tonight. If you have any questions, she's here to answer some questions for you. And Byron Elliott is her husband, and they are the owners and operators of REI Keyholder. They own a number of different properties in Florence and in Westcliff. 200 South Pikes Peak, most people would know as being the brewery. They are owners of that building, and they've done a very similar job upstairs there as they want to do at 517, 519. And then 116 Second in Westcliff, we probably all know as the feed store. They're also investing in our community in 426, 428 Main Street, converting the second floor into apartments and leasing the first floor as commercial. And then they're also working on, I've been working a lot with Byron trying to finalize the purchase of 4 Mile Ranch. That's a pretty significant project for them. Byron is doing an amazing amount of due diligence on this project. And right now, it's all looking very good to move forward, but let it be known that, that they are taking a genuine interest in our community from a community need perspective, which is really nice. They own other properties as well, but they're putting a lot of effort into creating some downtown housing, which we need significantly. That brings us back to 517, 519. What we're talking about now is a project that was not necessarily expected. We talked about that in the previous meeting. Some of the fire suppression requirements are not necessarily expected at the beginning of a project until it's fully discovered that there is a change of use and somebody comes inside and takes a look at it and says, you're going to need fire suppression and an alarm system. In this case, they're changing from an R1 boarding house occupancy to an R2. The difference being a boarding house occupancy is transient. Each of those units back then had, I believe, a sink in it, but they didn't have bathrooms. They weren't intended for long-term residents. Whereas they're converting it into R2 apartments. I believe it's 10 or 11 apartments. Katie can verify that. And all of these will be fully furnished. I've seen a couple of the apartments they did in Florence. They're absolutely beautiful. So we would like to be able to make sure that this building can accommodate these apartments. So really just more the requirements for water, so they're gonna have to change over to a 1-inch tap as well, in addition to putting in a fire line. And I passed out, before you got here, some of the estimates for this project. One of the estimates alone, which is the sprinkler system, is enough to qualify for a $50,000 grant. And we're really basing the application on that. There is also a number for the alarm system. And what they have not, we're still waiting for, and this ties into some of the frustration, still waiting for pricing, final pricing on adding the fire line to the building. And those numbers are coming in very high. The challenge is right now you see estimates from one contractor. We are having a very difficult time attracting contractors to our community. So I asked Katie and her project manager to try to get more, and they were very, I don't know if they were kindly told no, but nobody else is willing to provide estimates. It's a big challenge in our community from a construction perspective in general, but particularly for fire line and for fire suppression systems. So it adds a lot of expense, a lot of challenge. So we are presenting it to you with the Western States Fire Protection contracts that are estimates that are in front of you that they will work with. And again, they're still waiting for a fire line install pricing as well. So this is a significantly, in my opinion, a significantly expensive project compared to other fire suppression systems that have gone in. And if, with that, if you have any questions, happy to take them. And again, Katie is here as well. Katie Pierce is here as well to answer any questions you have.
So the fire suppression system requires its separate fire line coming in, is that correct?
Yes, there's.
How big is that?
4-inch.
4-inch.
It's a 4-inch line that comes in the front, and they will also be putting in a 1-inch tap for the.
And that's part of the 79,000 that,
That's part of the 79,000.
Okay.
Well, no, it's not. The fire line is not. That's
Is
what-
not.
It's not. They're waiting for the fire line estimate yet.
Right, so the 4-inch tap for the fire, that, the city doesn't charge a tap fee for
Correct,
that.
correct.
Because we're just really glad you're putting in a fire line, and that's really good. I would say that when we did our apartment complex, it was on a regular street, not a downtown Main Street apartment building, you know, second floor, and that, it was $25,000 to put in that line. We used Lippis, I don't know if that was.
They're waiting for an estimate from Lippis.
And Rick, we just got it back today. We got $30,000 for that estimate. We're trying to get 2 more. We may have somebody who can do it for a little bit less, but it's $30,000 for that fire line. to go into the building.
And they received a $50,000 estimate as well that did not repatch the road.
Right.
Oh, yes.
So it's pretty interesting what we're seeing right now for estimates and contractor participation.
Okay, because of my hearing and I'm trying to read at the same time, Mayor, you said that the city is waiving the tap fee for the fire line. Is that correct?
Yeah, they do that
Okay.
for
So I
everyone.
did hear that right. Okay,
Yes.
good.
As a general policy, we do not charge for fire lines. We
Yeah.
do not charge tap fees.
We also have reduced the water tap fee for multi-units. So luckily, as of a couple of years ago, it's a lot less expensive. It's still expensive, but it's a lot less now than it was a few years ago.
For 20 unit
Yeah.
20-unit buildings and above.
Well, it's
yeah.
for smaller units too, I believe.
For multifamily, I
For
think it was
multifamily.
20 units and more. Yeah.
Okay.
Could you introduce yourself, please?
Sure, I'm Katie Pierce. I'm one of the owners of the building.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, anybody else have any questions? Amy?
Thanks so much, Chairman Payne. Thanks so much for being with us, Ms. Pierce. I did have a couple of questions. One, given that you've also done similar work, as I understand it, above the brewery in Florence, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about some of the similarities or differences between doing these types of projects in Florence and in Canyon. I've heard that there are quite a few differences, particularly when it comes to fire suppression, and I'm wondering if you could illuminate that issue a bit for us.
Sure. So part of this, the nuance too, is renovating historic buildings and the difference between what the city requirements are and what the historic requirements are. And so a lot of times, if there's a city requirement, the historic can trump. So just because the city has a code that says we need fire suppression, that can be discretion and can be trumped by historic, saying you may not need it if you have such and such. So the brewery building, we were able to not do a fire suppression system because we have 2 exits, and then we put ladders that collapse or fold over the windows and down. We put those in every apartment. And so we were able to get by with not having the fire suppression system. And so those are the nuances, and it's really hard to bid a project based on the different places that you're doing those projects, because we don't know what's going to be expected between what the city is requiring and then what the historic will say you don't really need, and then what the city uses its discretion to determine whether or not we need it. So there's a lot of discretion there with historic buildings, is really the bottom line. And so in Florence, we didn't have to do it.
Thank you. That's really helpful to know. Could you also speak a bit about, I mean, I guess, is this type of grant critical to your decision as to whether or not, I guess, does knowing that we have this kind of grant, did that play into your decision to move forward with this project?
Yeah, absolutely, because we got lending when we purchased the building for the construction. And so we have a set amount for our construction fee that we didn't include this fire suppression system because we didn't know that we were going to need it. And so finding out about this grant and being able to use it is certainly critical for us, especially as costs continue to rise with all of the different renovation costs that we have.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for the work that you're doing. It's really exciting to know that we may soon have 10 more apartments in downtown Canyon City.
Yeah, absolutely. We love Canyon City, so it's been great.
Okay, John?
Thank you. Just kind of put my city council hat here on just a second, but what I heard is that for this project, we're having problems getting bidders to put in the fire system. Is this an industry-wide thing? And I don't know if you know, or this is a question for staff, but are we getting any feedback that potential bidders are avoiding us for some reason?
Just to comment on that quick, when World's End Brewery did their suppression system, they had a very hard time finding contractors. That was also more of a COVID thing. They really I didn't get into any discussions about whether contractors have, I mean, you hear it all the time. You hear it pretty often, but in that case, I didn't hear anything about that, being that they didn't want to come here. I just know you throw it all together with the supply chain issues, and it seems contractors are right in there with it. But maybe Ryan's heard more.
Oh, and these are, you're talking specifically fire suppression contractors, correct?
I was, yes.
Yeah. And I think historically, we've seen that a lot of these companies are based in Denver, a little bit further away. They're not there's not a whole lot to choose from to begin with for this type of work. So, their workload certainly plays into that as well, how far they're going to travel.
I'd say that when we did our project, we used Western States Fire Protection for our project, and they do come out of Colorado Springs. It's a specialty. Their employees are this is nuanced, very nuanced, and so there's just not a lot to choose from in general for this. But I will say that they did excellent work. The commercial contractors that I have spoken to, this is who they use exclusively, and that's their preferred contractor. But for contractors in general, overall, it is difficult to get people to return your phone call to say, I'm too busy to do your work. It's just dead silence. We got to the point where our contractor's like, I'm just going to do the work myself. It's easier than just to get somebody to even return my phone call, let alone come out and give me a bid for this project that I need to have done.
Okay, anybody else have anything? How many apartments again is it?
There'll be 10.
10? Okay.
It'll be amazing to have 10 smaller units. There's a desperate need for those. And just also want to point out that this life safety grant only applies to the downtown commercial district. It's not overall for all of Canyon City. I wish I could have taken advantage of it because it is a major burden, and it's really hard to swallow to have it. We did just have, our fire suppression went off last week. And that was the first time we were actually grateful that we spent the money to have it, because it was able to prevent, some major damage to our building. And so, or let alone like downtown Florence, where they were almost done with that beautiful historic renovation on Main Street, and then it burned down. And it's been over a year, and it still hasn't been up. So there are, as much as it is hard to swallow, there are some benefits, but I'm really glad that a grant like this can help make this project possible so we can have this housing.
Absolutely.
One thing that is still, I don't know if it's a question mark with this project or not, but I think there's still some interpretive question about whether alarm systems are needed in certain cases. There was an alarm panel that was put in for World's End Brewery, but I don't recall it being a significantly expensive thing, and it kind of came at an 11th hour. So I think there's a little uncertainty out there, which makes contracting difficult, and makes getting contractors difficult, and makes bidding projects difficult, and makes managing projects relatively difficult. And I don't know enough about that to know whether a building would require an alarm system or not an alarm system. If it has a suppression system, does it need an alarm system? Those are questions that obviously somebody else can answer, but there's still some question about whether in certain situations alarm systems are necessary or not. And it would be really nice to be able to nail that down so we could have some better understanding, even from our perspective.
Isn't that a requirement from the fire district?
Yeah.
Not necessarily the city?
Yes, but I think there's some room for interpretation in there from what I understand. I've not gone through the code and tried to master it.
Well,
and I won't.
yeah, it's hard to know, because if you have a fire suppression system, you kind of need to have the detection to let you know when it goes off. So we have the panel in ours, and it will notify us when a certain fire sprinkler may go off. In our instance last week, it was an intense amount of smoke. We could have had a lot of smoke damage. And we were given a phone call that it had gone off, so we were able to go there and manage it. Thank goodness, because the tenant wasn't even there. And so that could have really, really been bad. If it wasn't for that detection system, we wouldn't have known that. And so if it had been a sprinkler that had gone off, it'll also tell you exactly where in that unit that sprinkler is going off. And if we're not there right away, or if it doesn't tell the fire department right away, there could be major damage that happens if it's going off and we don't know.
Yeah, and maybe there's a different
Yeah.
level of alarm, different levels of alarm system that come into
Yeah,
question.
yeah, I don't know, maybe
know.
it,
But,
and
yeah.
certainly it's worth exploring, because it is expensive, but if you're gonna have the water coming in and all that comes with it, there's some detection that needs to
Mm-hmm.
go with it.
In our Florence building, we did have a requirement to have an actively monitored fire alarm system, so we have it. It was about $8,000 additional to put it into that building, but that was a requirement so that we did not have to have our fire suppression system. So,
That's nice. How nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else? Amy?
Just to follow up on that, was that a requirement from the fire district or from the
Yes,
city of Florence?
from the fire district.
So the requirement for the fire suppression system in the building in Canyon is a requirement of the city of Canyon City?
It's actually the fire
the
district.
It's
Fire,
the fire
yeah.
district. Yeah, so you have these plans and they're engineered
Sure.
for the fire district, and they take it to the fire district, and they're the ones that
Yep.
review it and approve it and give you the stamp, and you write them the check for it.
Sure. Do you know why the fire district required a fire suppression system in Canyon and not in Florence?
So we had a meeting, and at the end of the day, it was that discretion. Is it the fire marshal? Is he the head guy? The fire chief, thank you, Rick. He basically said, you are switching your change of use. If it was a boarding house, if we were doing all short-term rentals, we wouldn't have had to have it, which makes no sense, right? But because it's long-term use, and we were changing that code designation, we have to have it. That was his final determination.
Thank you.
Yeah. Florence has a different
Yeah.
fire chief than Canyons.
It's a different fire district.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, and then the city of Canyon and Fremont County wanted to get the same building codes, which included fire suppression. Is that correct, Commissioner? I'll throw you under the bus here.
That's before his time.
It is correct.
That is correct, okay.
None of those
Yeah.
discussions have happened, though, for several years. It hasn't happened in the last 2.5 years since I've been on.
Yeah, it was approved in 2020, I believe.
Yeah, that
New
was my
building
last
codes.
year as a
Yeah.
commissioner. Yeah.
You know, I guess in fairness to the fire chief too, in this building, Katie mentioned that their building in Florence has ladders out the window. There are no windows here because there's building attached to building. So that was part of the discussion, I know. And when evaluating risk, it's tough. It's a tough call. It's just a tough call.
Well, at our fire board meetings, I always bring up the projects on fire suppression that we're working on the URA side, and the chief always reminds me that a fire suppression system could save a whole city block. Okay.
It's tough to argue that,
Yeah.
argue against that, yeah, I know.
Especially
Well, I
true
could.
downtown.
I would love to, but as far as arguing against that, you want to talk to fire chiefs across this state and across cities and many districts, and they would, if given the big hammer, they would require fire suppression in every new single-family construction. And that would drive costs way up, as we're seeing just in this one multifamily situation. They can speak to the hypotheticals all they want as far as saving a whole city block, but here we see the real-world consequences of this kind of policy from certain fire districts across the state, not just this one. In any case, we're not here to litigate that.
Yeah.
Correct. And this
So-
is why the life safety grant exists.
Yes.
Yeah, and because it's so expensive to renovate these buildings, every penny helps immensely for us. It is super expensive, and that's why there's all of these different programs out there for these historic buildings to assist, so that you don't just want to tear them down, because they're so expensive to renovate. So any penny helps, absolutely.
Okay,
One
John.
final question. Do you have some idea of when you may begin renting?
So we got our permits, yay, finally. So we are supposed to be done with the construction by November. So according to our lenders, that is our goal. Realistically, we're looking at the end of the year, and so to begin renting in January-ish. Yeah.
Okay, anybody else have any comments or questions? I will ask for a motion on authorizing the executive director's signature on this.
Chairman Payne, I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the executive director of the URA to sign the Downtown Life Safety Grant application for 517, 519 Main Street.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Dennehy?
Aye.
Grantham?
Aye.
Hamrick?
Aye.
Reeser?
Aye.
Schmisher?
Aye.
A. Smith?
Aye.
Stein?
Aye.
Tracy?
Aye.
Worthington?
Aye.
Chairman Payne.
Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Rick, do you have anything else?
I do not.
Okay.
Thank you very
Ryan,
much.
how about you?
No, sir.
Okay, our next meeting would be August 2nd. I will miss that. I will be in eye surgery for my cataracts on August 2nd, so I won't be here. Yeah. I know. With that, no further business before this board. We are adjourned.